low country. Low.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Noon Knowledge session today is with Cindy Hagemann, and she's going to be talking to us about soft skills, which is something that I think is the new educational buzzword. And Cindy has done several classes for us. She is kind of a marketing and soft skills guru. So without any further ado, Cindy Hagemann.
Thank you. Thank y'all for being here. So, we were having a little sidebar conversation about soft skills over here because the college has decided to embrace it. And can anybody throw out to me what they think soft skills is? Probably not this group because you probably already have done your homework, but any of y'all have an idea? Okay. No. Okay, so you've got soft skills. Sandy, is it the red button?
Yes. Side, another side. There you go.
Ah. Okay. So you have your soft skills and your hard skills. So your hard skills are more of the things that you would learn in school. So you take a chemistry class, you take an algebra class. You're going to learn what that is, hopefully, right? But your soft skills are more of the skills that evolve into you. Welcome. Did you get a handout?
I did.
Good. Your soft skills will help you evolve into being a better leader, a more productive person in life. They're all of a sudden one of the buzzword kind of things that the employers are like, hey, someone can look really good on a resume with all this education and all this experience that they have, but what else can they do? What can they provide? Can they add to the culture of our company? And so that's why soft skills come in handy. So on your handout, I think it's probably kind of small, but
Did I get one? No, that's what I was going to do.
so I thought it would be kind of good to kind of as a warm-up go through each of these, and we could talk about talk about whether you think something's a hard skill or a soft skill, and you can shout it out. It's not. This is interactive. Don't be shy. So communication skills.
Soft.
Thank you. Data analysis.
Hard.
Computer skills.
Hard.
Accounting skills.
Hard.
Team player.
Soft.
Time management.
Soft.
Leadership. Problem-solving skills.
I did one soft and hard.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Being organized or organization.
Soft.
Being flexible.
Soft.
Having a strong work ethic.
Soft.
Writing skills.
Has to be hard.
Yeah.
Be a little both. Got to teach me.
Conflict resolution.
Soft.
Mathematics.
Hard.
Foreign language.
Way hard.
Having a sense of humor.
Soft.
Public speaking.
Both.
True. You can take public speaking courses and classes, and most of us probably have done that or belong to Toastmasters or something like that, and it helps you with that ability. But some people just can't do it even with that, right? I mean, are any of you in that situation where you've taken that class and then when it comes to your time to get up there and speak, you're just a ball of jello. You can't do it, or it's very difficult. So it's kind of a little bit of both. The software development,
Hard.
being self-motivated, having a positive attitude, knowing graphic design,
Hard.
being dependable, physics,
Way hard.
being able to multitask,
Soft.
web developing,
Hard.
having confidence,
Soft.
human resources skills.
Hard.
That's the hard skill. Networking, thinking skills, and being friendly. Okay, great. You guys did awesome with that, which I knew you would. But this kind of gives you a little bit of idea. So when these are kind of the difficult things to put on your resume. Oops, did I just turn it off? So like, you know, you would put on your resume that you took a physics class and you know that, but you're not going to put that you have confidence. That. I guess if you did, they might go, okay, that's a little bit bizarre. Okay. So, hard skills is the specific knowledge and abilities required to have success on your job. So that's the thing that, so if you're an accountant, obviously you need to have that background, and you need to have the certifications, possibly if you're a CPA, you need to have all your accounting courses, and so forth. You have to have that to get even hired to be an accountant. But soft skills, they include interpersonal, people skills, and personal attributes that are needed for success on the job. So they might be the skills that, so you got the job, now how do you get along with other people in the office? What do? Do you come up with ideas to help the company? Are you participating in the company culture? Are you a positive person to work around? Or are you coming in and it's just a job to you and just, I'm here, it's Monday, great. So employers are finding that they prefer both soft and hard skills. And depending upon the position, sometimes soft skills outweigh hard skills. For instance, if you are an owner of a company and you need to hire a receptionist, you're really going to need that person to know certain computer skills and phone skills. But those you could probably teach them a few things. But if they don't have the personality to be a receptionist, they're the face and the voice of your company, then that person probably isn't going to be well suited in that. And I don't know how many of you have ever had this happen to you, but I've had it happen to me more than once, where I've gone into a doctor's office or a company and the receptionist is not friendly. They're not smiling, they're not happy, they don't want to be there, they don't want you there. I mean, that is not a great reflection of your company. So those are the kind of things that, yeah, just because somebody has computer skills on their resume and they can answer the phone or they've had that experience doesn't mean they might be the right person to put out front. And this is something that employers really, really need to think hard about. Putting the wrong person in that job is, can be very detrimental to your company. So this is what some of the people are saying. Soft skills come down to how people interact with each other from a verbal or nonverbal perspective. They are non-technical in nature. When we think of people skills, words such as personality, empathy, and tonality come to mind. So, being a team player, that's one of the biggest things that employers are looking for nowadays. They want people who can actually get along with everyone and who actually are going to go contribute to making it a better place to work. If, everybody, when you work a certain place and you pretty much, 40, 50 hours is a long time to put in each week at a company. So what they're finding now is if you're happy going there, or if your employees seem to be a little happy and they're getting along, then it's a much better place to work, and people stay. They're not as quickly to leave. So if you have a sense of humor and you're friendly, obviously appropriate humor is in the workplace is very, very, very important to keep in mind. And one of the things that I have worked for 3 accounting firms as marketing director, and I don't have the personality that most accountants do. So when I would come on board and start working for these companies, it was really difficult for me because I would walk in and people are like this, walking down the hallway. They walk right past you and they don't acknowledge you. They don't, that's just they're not mean. That's just their nature for the most part, that they're driven to what they're going to do, and they're thinkers and they're very analytical. And so I'm the one who bebops on the hallway, hey, how's it going? You know, and I got to the point where at all three of these companies that I would like force people to say hi to me. I think people would see me come, oh, like it kind of brings them out of their little walking coma. So keeping an open mind is another thing that a lot of companies, especially if they've been around for a long time and they've always done things a certain way, it's really important for them to hire people who maybe think a little bit different than they do, so that they can bring new perspective and new ideas, and that's attractive for people who might come in as new hires as well. If you've got the same regime all the time and they're just doing the same thing over and over and it's not necessarily right, bringing in some new people who are fresh thinkers and a little bit enthusiastic and want to be there can make a huge difference in a culture. So, keeping an open mind about things creates trust and respect, and it makes you more approachable and also a whole lot easier to work with. So, active listening skills. This is one that I really struggle with, and I don't know about Kathy, you too? Kathy and I have a lot of similarities, like that kind of stuff. So this is a place where if there ever was probably a course on active listening, I would take it. That would be one of those things that I think is really important for all of us. So listening is so much more than listening to respond, because I find myself doing that. So someone will come and then I just can't wait to jump in there, and sometimes I jump in before they're finished, and that's so rude. We shouldn't do that. Or if someone's going on and on, I'm like, I already know where the end is going on this, and I'll finish their story. So, it's a little bit impatient, but active listening can make a huge difference with people, especially if you're a supervisor. If somebody comes to you and wants to talk about something or an issue, you have to take that time. And thinking before you respond, and sometimes not responding at all is okay. Sometimes they just need that person to talk to. I used to work for a man who was so good, and when you would come into his office, whether it was an appointment or you just knocked on the door and said, "Do you have a minute?" he would leave his desk, and he had a little small table and 2 chairs, and he would get up and he would go automatically and go sit over there, so that he was at your level right across from you. So whatever you said, you were on equal ground, and he was looking right at you, and you felt important. And that taught me a lot, because it was the first time I'd ever worked for someone who did that. Normally people stay behind their desk and they're, typing or whatever, and you walk in and you're like, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And they're like, "Yeah, what?" And they don't stop. But this guy, he was the owner of this huge company, and he would drop whatever he was doing and go over there and sit with you, whether it was for 2 minutes or for an hour or whatever you needed. And that's how he was with all of his 150 employees, and that was pretty remarkable. I don't know how he got anything done, but you felt like when you left his office that he cared and that he listened to what you had to say, and that makes a big difference for an employee. So, when you think about trying to be successful with your soft skills, we'll do the do's first. Do try to see the situation from the other person's perspective. That's very hard, to take yourself out of it and kind of see their point of view. Demonstrate understanding with nonverbal cues. Anybody have an idea what that might be? Some of those kind of things? Yes, very good. And even like what my old boss used to do, like that was nonverbal, where he would get up and go over and sit in front of you, and you felt he was listening, but nodding and looking at them. Now, okay, I have to say I've been guilty of this before, where I'll look at someone, I'm thinking of my grocery list, so we have to kind of, we have to be engaged as well, but it's hard and it takes practice, and we all have such busy lives and so much going on. So when someone needs that minute of your time, you have to go, okay, focus, and it's hard. It's hard, and I'm really like shiny object driven. Like whatever's going on, I'm like, shoop, you know. So it's tough. You're not like that, are you, Kathy? And use open body language. So that is another thing that's a nonverbal. So rather than sitting there, okay, what, or staying on your computer, you know, you can turn around, you can face someone, and you can summarize and paraphrase to ensure understanding when they're finished. That's the key there is let them finish and then say, so what I'm hearing is blah, 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 just to make sure that you're both on the same page with it. But you don't want to like basically repeat everything that they just said. You just kind of do something really little, like, okay, so I understand, you know, this is what's happened. And this says to ask open-ended questions to clarify. So that, I guess that's pretty important to get some feedback from them as well with that kind of stuff. So what you don't want to do is if someone comes to you with a problem, and especially if it's a coworker versus coworker issue, don't take sides during that discussion. That's a big no-no. Don't give them advice. They're there to talk to you about something, and you probably need to work through a few things before you throw advice out there. I'm really bad about that. I just want to solve everybody's problems, and I'm just like, well, you need to go do this. No. Step back. Don't cross your arms. Don't turn away. That's some of this nonverbal stuff. Don't tell your own story or share your own problems. Anybody do that? Melinda, you don't do that? Never. And I do it all the time. Where I want to, like, oh yeah, that happened to me, and then I want to tell my story, but I have to just, you know, this is their story, and if something's going on, it's probably not as similar. And I had lunch recently with somebody who was that way. Like everything that I said, it wasn't problems necessarily. It was just a conversation. She had a better story or a better antidote to every single thing I said, and I was like thinking, well, gosh, I could have like, you know, I'm not winning this at all, you know, like everything is one up me. It was pretty funny. You can suggest solutions, but this is where you have to be very careful with the fine line. And I'll tell you something, if there is a conflict resolution that needs to be handled within an office, this same boss that I was telling you about who would actually get up and move to talk about, if I started to complain or talk about somebody in the office that there was an issue, and I hated this about him, but he would get up and go call them to come in so that I had to tell my story in front of them. Oh, let me tell you something, that was really hard. But I always, after the first couple times that it happened, it really made me think before I just wanted to go in and just complain about somebody. And but it also allowed me to tell the story and them to hear it. They may not have been aware that I felt that way or that other people felt that way, and we were able to kind of do a conflict resolution right. I mean, his whole thing was, let's just get it out in the open and let's just deal with it right now. And it was like, oh, that was so hard. That was so hard. But it was actually good. It was actually, you know, in hindsight, it was really good. So, for effective communication, give clear or send clear and concise messages. So, this is where email and text messaging sometimes gets lost, and it's so much better if something's going on to just get up and go talk to somebody face to face. And how many times have you gotten an email from somebody and you felt like, wow, you know, that's tone. So rather than shooting an email back to them and causing something, if you can, get out of your office and go down to their office. If you can't, pick up the phone and try to talk to them to kind of, that way your tone and your voice, you take a breath first, obviously, and you're not going to call them to confront them. You're going to call them to kind of, to get their side or their. This is a great way to resolve something before it escalates, because immediately if you shoot an email off, then another email is going to, it's going to escalate. And it probably was nothing to begin with. It was so be very, very careful with that and cautious. I tell people all the time, if you get something and you think it's the wrong tone, or if they're asking some questions and you're feeling defensive, rather than shooting off an email about it, it's so much better. I can't tell you how many times I would show up and just go to someone's door and say, hey, can we talk about that email real quick? And then we'd sit down and kind of talk about it. And no big deal. Really no big deal at the end of the day. And that's tailor your messages to the audience. So that's, again, a lot with emails. Be careful about replying all and things like that that aren't necessary. If you need to respond to somebody, you respond, but everybody may not need that response, and just think of those type of things. It really annoys me when someone replies all, and it's just not really necessary, and I think it annoys everybody on that email list usually too, because they're like, really? I don't really care what they're having for lunch or whatever. I don't need their menu list or whatever it was. And using appropriate communication channels at the right time, like I was just saying, don't necessarily shoot an email back if you feel like it could cause more issues. Sometimes that communication channel might be being in front of them, or might be picking up the phone if that's the an alternative. And you'd be surprised how your tone of your voice, you can just kind of soften it and just kind of, don't be confrontational, but that can make a huge difference. And if possible, I always tell everybody they should learn a little bit of public speaking skills. So is that something you guys offer at the college? And there's also things like Toastmasters out there. And I don't know if you guys have an active chapter here or not, but most communities do, and they're pretty good. Here I am saying I used to be. If you've ever been in Toastmasters, you get counted off for saying and I'm an ummer. We used to have put money in every time you said it. Now y'all are gonna be counting my ums. So basic communication principles. Everything we do is a form of communication if you think about it. How you do your hand gestures, how you speak, how your tone is, everything. The way we begin our message often determines the outcome of communication. Think about that. And that really goes back to if someone does shoot you an email that you're not really happy with, how you respond versus just showing up at their door with a smile and saying, hey, let's talk about this. And that's going to make a bigger difference than shooting them back an email, and it'd be, yes, don't start that. The way the message is delivered always affects the way the message is received. Think about that one too, because those are, if you're the receiver of it and you get that email, you're going to start getting defensive. And so you have to be careful about all that. So we've got some guidelines for effective business communication. And this is called the 7 C's for effective business communication. So we've got clarity, completeness, conciseness. You don't need to go on and on and on. Get to the point of what you're talking about. And consideration. So consideration is considering who you're speaking to and who you are. So, you are representing yourself when you talk to someone. So be careful about that tone, and your communication method is so important. And you can make a huge difference just by using some of these, like even with an email. If you have to send an email out, if you think about, I need it to be complete, I need it to be concise, because we don't want to go on and have a lengthy email. Who wants to read that? We want to consider who we're addressing, and obviously be courteous and concrete and correct. Watch out for any typos or grammar so, just those are kind of important things. And I think that if everybody did this type of thing all the way around, it would make a big difference in a business. So, again, with the conflict resolution, if a conflict is not handled efficiently and effectively, the results can be damaging, and they can go on and on and on. And it's so important just to, I think that's why my former boss would always just call the person right in and say, let's just get to the bottom of this. You wouldn't be ready for that. You'd be like, and it's hard. That was a really hard thing to do. If I had a complaint about somebody, to actually say the complaint in front of them. It's hard. And my delivery softened immediately when that person came in the room, in my tone, because all of a sudden I didn't want to be a complainer. I realized that we needed to resolve whatever it was, and by just complaining about it, that was not going to resolve anything. So think of that, and if you're a boss, think of next time someone comes to complain to you about somebody, how that could make a huge difference. Because I had another boss one time who did the opposite. He actually encouraged people to come in and complain about other people, and it caused a lot of resentment and issues within the company. So he almost, if you had a complaint about somebody and you went and knocked on his door, yeah, he would sit down and listen to you, and then he would turn around and fire off an email to you that was just, hateful or just, it just brought you down. And then you knew that your coworker, because a lot of times he said who had told him about it. So then you're resentful because this guy, instead of that guy coming to you, and I'll tell you an example that happened to me one time, and it seems really minor now, but of course I do marketing. So I had done this big kind of ad campaign, and there was this little typo in the ad campaign. And this lady actually had seen the typo. Instead of bringing it to me, she took it to the big boss, not just my supervisor, to the big boss. And then he put a voicemail on my phone, and he was basically rewarding her, pat on the head, for coming to him. And then I wanted to go rip her head off. You're thinking, that's not teamwork. Everybody makes mistakes, but we should have each other's back, when it comes to things like that. So that created, and that was the culture of that company, and he encouraged it. And so you couldn't trust anyone within that organization, and you never knew. And it could be just the simplest little thing. And mine was so simple, and it was just a matter of me correcting, I think it was an A-N instead of an A-N-D in the thing, and before it went to print. And she could have, we're just talking simple things usually, but that was encouraged within an organization. It's hard to work for an organization like that encourages that kind of stuff. And so a lot of times, not a lot of times, I'd say most of the time the tone comes from the top and what their expectations are. And if they want to hire people who are like snitches and go behind your back, then, I didn't work there very long, I'll be honest with you. It was terrible. When conflict is effectively resolved, it can lead to personal growth and team development. And I have a little story about that too. This company that I worked for in Norfolk, that the boss was so good. I did have an issue with a man that was in our office, and I just felt like he was rude, and he yelled, and he was one of those people who would lose his temper, and he came in and yelled at me. Yelled, and I'm like, what? My dad work here? It's like, and I, went into the boss, and I was upset, because, as a woman, you get, but I was like, and I had heard other people always complain about this person being a hothead and all kinds of stuff, but I had never seen he had never attacked me, and when he attacked me, I was like, wow, this is hard. And so I went in and complained to the boss, and the boss called him in, of course. And we sat in that office for like 2 hours with the door closed, the three of us, kind of hashing, yelling, crying, and breaking through some walls. And my boss realized he had an issue with this guy. And I was like one of the first people that actually kind of brought it and said, hey, I'm not putting up with this. And so, they made him start doing some counseling with learning some skills of not losing your temper and things like that. And in hindsight, he became a much better person, and you could actually see that he was working on it. And a few months later, this was also a company who had mentors. Everybody was assigned a mentor, and you rotated every year from. So that was an enormous wall that got broken down, and it could have been handled so wrong and so differently if I had not gone to my boss and I had just let it boil and caused resentment and hurt, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do was sit in the room with that man for 2 hours. But we broke down a lot of walls, and he learned to respect me as well too, because he was under the understanding that I didn't need to be there. I was just marketing, and I wasn't important, and that's what he told everybody. So as he got to know me and he started to see my work and respect me, we broke down some, So anyway, just saying, it can be done, and that was probably one of the most difficult situations where we did not like each other at all. And then we became really good friends, and so it can happen. It won't always happen, but it can happen. So, meet together with both parties if you have a conflict. Allow each other to tell the story. So this is where having a supervisor or somebody in the room is a lot better than just two people trying to hash something out. That can be really bad. And everybody needs to talk and tell their side of the story. And as the person in the middle, you certainly aren't going to take sides. You can't. And identify what could be done and discuss the necessary changes going forward. So that was one thing that my former boss did really well, is before we ever left a room, we would basically all have kind of assignments on, you're going to work on this, you're going to do this, and you're going to, and those were, and we had to report back to him on things like that, what we were doing. And it's very, very important. And if you are doing the conflict resolution for them, you need, express to them that they are adults, and being proactive in resolving the issues. It's really, really important. Sometimes disciplinary action does have to play in there, and sometimes people need to be written up for certain things. I've seen companies where people are just mean and things have happened, and that shouldn't be accepted no matter what. I mean, some horrible, horrible things. I've seen some undermining. I've seen people purposely do things to hurt people. So it should never be tolerated. And I've also seen people get fired over just personal interactions. Sometimes it's necessary. So when you talk about these skill sets and these things that the employers are looking for, a lot of it brings back to a form of leadership and leading a company and helping lead a company to where it needs to be. And this quote I really liked: leadership is a full contact sport. If you cannot address conflict in a healthy, productive way, you should not be in a leadership role. And I do believe that. And I've seen many, many people, especially in the accounting industry, who were just promoted because they were good accountants. But then when they got to be managers, they were actually managing other people, but they had no skill sets except for their work as an accountant. They didn't know how to talk to people. They didn't know how to. There's a having those difficult discussions as a manager that you have to have with people. They didn't have any clue how to do that. And I saw over and over and over where managers would discuss something about an employee, but they would never actually go to the employee and let the employee know it was an issue. Instead, they just discussed it the day after a certain time at night, but nobody ever told her. If you don't tell people, they're not going to know. And don't assume that they know just because you've worked there for 15 years and they've worked there for 15 minutes. It's tough. Being honest with people, and that's where it comes down to, sometimes having the difficult discussions, but I think it can make a big difference if you talk to people and discuss some of those things honestly and together with them. Don't do it over an email, which I've seen before too. But being honest with them, even if it's difficult, will create trust. And if you lose that trust with employees, you're not going to get it back. I mean, very rarely do you get it back. That employee is probably already pulling that resume up and looking for another job. So if you've trained that employee and you want to invest in them some more, they need to trust you. It's very important. And having those leadership skills, learning to motivate people and knowing when to show support and encouragement for people as well. People every single day they have struggles, and we don't know what their struggles are. Whether it's family issues or maybe their car. I was talking to a girl yesterday, sweet. I was in a store and she was telling me that morning on her way to work that she had a flat tire, and she said, I didn't know what to do, and I'm standing on the side of the road crying, and so she was late to work, and everything. So it's just one of those things that you don't know that story, and you don't know. She called her boss and said what was going on, but she said she got to work and they were very concerned about her, and she said it made her feel a lot better than if she had walked in the door and they said, well, yeah, you had a flat tire or what. I mean, you just never know how someone's going to treat something, but it's really, really important to be supportive. And if you have a flat tire every day, then there's probably a problem. It's important for you to take responsibility as an employee for your actions and what you've said and what you've done. And that's something that a lot of people do not do. They want to blame everybody else. And I've seen all ages of people do this. When you sit with them and you say, well, this happened, or why did this happen? They want to blame everybody. And I've seen people that are 60 years old blame other people, and I've seen people that are 22 blame other people. So it's not necessarily a millennium thing or anything. It's just there's some people who don't ever want to take responsibility for what they've done. But if you take responsibility, like when I've made lots and lots of mistakes, and I still make them. You just say, you know what, it happened. I'm sorry. Let's move on, and things will be a lot better if you learn from it. And I like people in a workplace to be very proactive on everything that they do. So if they're always kind of thinking ahead, it makes things so much easier, whether you're their manager or whether you're just a coworker. But and that's just a little like with just about everything. So another company that I work for never planned ahead for anything, ever. Even though we knew every year that certain things would happen. And when I first got there, I'm like, do you have a strategic plan? Do you have goals? Where are we? No. And every time these things would happen, this has happened again. Like, seriously? You know that this is going to happen or potentially could happen. So, I worked for a big company one time that was in a huge high-rise building. And so one of the things when I first went to work there was, so what is our plan for fire escape or an emergency or anything like that. And they all were like, I don't know, I guess you just leave the building. And I was like, oh boy, you know, we're on the 26th floor and, you know, you've got stairwells, you're not supposed to use elevators when things happen. You know, I said, has this ever been talked to or talked through? And they looked at me like you know, well, that'll never happen. Well, you know what? It happened. And in fact, there was a fire in our building and we had to evacuate. And it was cold winter day. And it was interesting. But it was one of those things that it had never happened in their 20 years prior to that. They thought that I had pulled the fire alarm to make a point, but it wasn't. It's just like you need to really be thinking that things could happen, or what if, you know. I worked for a credit union for many years, and they were really, really good about being proactive and having a plan for robbery or for things like that. You know, not ever think anything like that would ever happen, but it did happen. And those people were very well, in that branch, well prepared when those gunmen came in and you know, jumped over the counters with guns and stuff. And those poor girls, they were, you know, it shakes you up, but they knew exactly what to do, and they knew where their buttons were, and nobody got hurt. And so, you know, you just, no matter where you work, there's probably some type of strategic plan you can have with, and sometimes it's just emergencies with weather. You know, I lived in Charleston when Hurricane Hugo came through, so, you know, you have to know when to tell your employees, don't come in today, and this is what you need to do, and this is who you report to. Sometimes it's a phone tree that you're assigned to, and that you call a certain person and tell them your location to tell them that you're safe or where you're at. And so it just certain things like that. Text messaging helps a lot. So, reactive and proactive language. So, if you're reactive to somebody, you could possibly say to them when they're talking to you about a problem, well, there's nothing I can do. And, you know, basically what you should be saying is, you know, let's figure this out. And so if there's a reactive language as well, if somebody's complaining about you, you say, well, that's me. That's how I am. Take it or leave it. You know, I've seen things like that, and I've heard people say things like that. And, no, you know, you can always think things a little bit differently and treat people a little bit better. And when you go to talk to your boss, and you say someone makes you really mad, you've got to control those feelings, and you've got to treat them a whole lot differently. So when we talked about the emails and things like that, don't let somebody get under your skin. Just deal with it. And you know, you go through these little things like, I can't. Well, you're choosing that you can't. You know, so you know, these type of things can make a huge difference. So the critical thinking, problem solving skills. So if you've never done situation analysis, those are kind of good to learn how to work through things with a SWOT analysis with things. You develop creative solutions, and you follow through on your action plans. And don't just bring up problems. See, you know, sometimes people will actually know. So if someone comes to you with a problem, don't just say, well, you know, this is what you should do. Say, well, do you have an idea how we could resolve this? And a lot of times they'll have something, and you can kind of work with that. Because they're the ones in the trenches. So these are the employers are looking for these top skills. These are the ones that they're coming out and saying that are most important. So problem solving skills, being a team player, having initiative, being proactive, and having effective communication skills. So if you think about those skill sets, those are really hard skills to teach, but they can be taught, and people can do it. If there's a lot of great books out there. There's a lot of, I guess, classes that will be developed and that you can take. And there are some writers out there that write so well to kind of help you think about these type of things. So, you know, you can seek that kind of, you can just Google soft skills and things, but I do have some books also on the, you know, on the last page to suggest. And some other good skills are time management. Obviously, an employer doesn't want someone who's always late for work or can't, or misses a lot of work or can't do their work within that time frame that's allotted. That's really important. So if you've got 3 weeks to do a project and there's just, you know, and every single time it takes you a lot longer than that, that's probably not good. There's probably something needs to happen. And being organized is really helpful as well. That helps you with everything. Having interpersonal skills, that's just how you deal with people and how you treat them. Treat them with respect, treat them with kindness, and you know, it goes a long way. And having good judgment in making those decisions. You know, how often do smart people make bad decisions? Happens a lot. Some of the most intelligent people on the books can make really stupid choices, whether it's in their personal life. They, you know, how many of them have been married so many times because they keep choosing the wrong person, you know, the same person, basically. Things like that. And even at work, there's a lot of decisions that sometimes people don't learn from that, from those bad decisions. So if you can learn from those mistakes that you make, just carry it forward. It makes a lot, it'll make a big difference for you and your employer if you can do that. And being able to be flexible. So that's an issue with a lot of companies that have always done things the same way. You ever work for a company when you go in, you say, why do you do it that way? That's just the way we've always done it. That drives me up the wall when I hear that, because that doesn't mean it's the right way to do things. I am huge on processes and how things are done, but you can always improve processes. I mean, there's always a way to do something better, especially nowadays with all the wonderful apps and computer systems and ways to do things. It's amazing, but when a company is stuck doing things just because that's the way they've always done it, that, you know, and if they're not open to change, that's a little bit, that's very hard, very, very hard. And being assertive is, that's a tough one, because sometimes if women are a little bit too assertive, we get called a B word. You don't want to be aggressive, because that could be, that's the wrong tone as well. So, you know, being assertive is just more, Melinda, can you explain it? You won't. Okay. Well, being assertive would be giving your opinion or giving your suggestions, but doing it in a non-confrontational way. And is that a good way to say it? So I have kind of a funny story with that. Years ago, I worked in economic development and tourism, and it was in Georgia. And I worked directly for the mayor of the city. And it was, you know, it wasn't a real big city, so, you know, it was kind of like you did a little bit of everything. So when I was actually leaving my position, because my husband was in the military and we were moving, the newspaper did a story that I was leaving. There wasn't a whole lot going on in that town, obviously. So they went and interviewed the mayor and said, you know, that, you know, Cindy's leaving her position, and he put a quote that said, I'm going to miss her because of her aggressive style, and it was in the paper. And I went to him and I said, do you mean assertive? I was like, and I was arguing with him, and he's like, no, I mean aggressive. I'm like, you don't mean aggressive. And I'm like, oh, maybe he does. You know? But his whole thing was more that I was getting things done, and it was kind of like, you know, but it was funny because I got a lot of people teasing me about that, and so I think assertive is a better word than aggressive. I just do. But anyway, and being respectful, that's all part of the whole thing. And then stress management skills. Whew, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. We're all under so much pressure, and we all have a lot going on. If you can if you have to close your door for 5 minutes and deep breathe or go run, you know, after work, or go work out, or you know, I know people who do painting and furniture projects. That's actually one of my stress relievers is making is building furniture and doing things like that. It's just kind of my zone. My husband calls it the zone. If he comes out and I'm in my workshop and I'm covered in paint and sawdust and I'm just kind of, you know, and I've got the music going, he's like, oh, you're in the zone. But that's my way of kind of getting rid of some of that stress. And so find whatever it is for you. Maybe it's yoga, maybe it's running, maybe it's walking, maybe it's, you know, find that and do it. It makes a big difference in your life. Being proactive. I actually found this sign in like a kindergarten class, and I thought it was really cute. But it's, you know, I will take initiative. I'm a responsible person. I do the right thing without being asked, even when no one is looking. So how many times have you been in your office, in a hallway, and there's like a piece of trash on the floor, and everybody has walked down that hallway and walked over that piece of trash, and it takes 2 seconds to reach down and pick it up, and nobody saw you do it. It doesn't really matter, but you just, you know, that's something really simple, but it's something that is like, you know what, I'm gonna pick that up, or a paper clip or something, you know. But people just walk right past all that stuff, don't they? And don't be that person, you know. Make that difference. I choose my actions, attitude, and mood, which I think is pretty cool. I love that this was in a classroom. I think it's, and we could all put this in our office. You know, think about it. And I do not blame others for my wrong actions. So, you know, we could take that little, you know, I will do this, I will do that. You know, and actually, when my kids were growing up, I would have liked to have had like this poster with my 4 kids. Like, okay, you know, we're going to resolve this conflict, and everybody's going to walk away and be happy. So, how do you improve? It says easy steps. Here we go. Develop communication skills. So that's where you can take your classes and do things. Practice active listening. That's where we talked about not listening just to respond. Actually listen to someone. That is so hard. I'm going to tell you that's the hardest one for me. And build relationships. So, you know, building your relationships with coworkers or wherever you are really can help you. You know, if you know where someone's coming from, if they're having a bad day, maybe they've got a family member going through, you know, health problems or cancer treatments, or maybe they are themselves. You know, it can make a big difference if you kind of know those things, and you can say, hey, you know, how you feeling today, or you know, or you bring them in their favorite Starbucks coffee just for no reason. Things like that. So, you know, just think about that and practice leading. There's a lot of people who will never, ever, ever be leaders, but they can still be involved. And not everybody is supposed to lead, but in some way, shape, or form, they can. And believe me, coming from the accounting world, I've seen a lot of people who probably should just stay in that cubicle and crunch numbers. But as you get developing them and working with them, you'd be surprised at how people can blossom and come out of that shell. And learn to take initiative. If you're not that type of person, then learn what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And here's a couple of books that I think are pretty helpful. The last one, the 10 Things Employers Expect Employees to Know, is a pretty good one. That might be something that you guys might even, you know, consider looking at when you're developing some curriculum. But these are they're concise and short and easy to read. That's important. And we're done. Anybody have any questions?
So you know, we can all always work on ourselves and our soft skills. If we're working in an environment where people have good soft skills, but there's some folks within that environment that don't, and maybe think that's, like, how do you start to lead by example to teach?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And many times that's what it takes, is for you to be that leader and not, so, not responding negatively to emails, not being that negative person that complains about everything. When you come in on Monday morning, you may not feel like being there, but you don't have to let everybody know that you don't feel like being there. You can come in with a smile, and you can be that person. You can shut your door in your office and cuss and scream and kick the wall if you want, but it's a lot of times if you put that smile on your face and do things that you want to do, you'd be surprised at how much better you will feel. Now, and I have a little thing on, I happen to wear a bright color today, but this is just a coincidence. This is not how I'm feeling today. But many times, if I wake up and I am like, I don't want to go to work, or the weather's really bad, I'll put on the brightest thing in my closet, because it just helps kind of brighten your day. And the other thing that you find is that people will say, "Oh, what a bright color," or and that makes you feel better right away. So, if you're always wearing grays and browns and blacks, and then you're feeling grays and browns and blacks, maybe you need to, get a tie that get a hot pink tie, or get a, there's a lot of things that can be done to, maybe you don't wear a lot of bright colors. That's okay. But, maybe you can get a scarf, or do something, put something in your office that brightens your day a little bit, a little antidote, and Kathy, when you were talking about sometimes to resolve things yourselves, I had an incident one time with a lady that was similar to what you're saying, is that there really wasn't anybody to kind of come between, and she and I were just butting heads. And I actually went to her office one day, and I said, "Hey, let's go to lunch." And we went to lunch, and we just got to know each other, and it broke down a lot of those barriers. And I didn't know a lot of things that were going on in her life. She had a mother with Alzheimer's. She had a brother who she was the caregiver for, who was going through cancer treatments. I mean, she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, and she was bringing it to work. And again, I'm not saying that she was doing the right thing, but I was empathetic. I listened, and it helped me understand where she was coming from a little bit better. So I would make sure I went past her office in the morning and smiled and said hi. Sometimes I gave her a hug, and and we became friends. But it was, I never in a million years would have thought we would ever have been friends, because we just, no matter what happened or what I wanted to do, or she was butting heads with me, and it was just a matter of us going to lunch. Now, it might have been more effective if we had gone and had a liquid lunch somewhere, and had a couple glasses of wine or something, but we just went to lunch and just got to know each other, and me understanding her perspective helped me a lot. And again, I'm not giving excuses for people who are just in a bad mood all the time, but me seeing her side of it, then when people I tend to be the person in the office that everybody comes to complain about other people. Don't ask me why, I don't know. I track that, but when people would come and complain about her, I'd say, "You know what?" I said, "Let's give her a break," or "Let's do this," or, and just try to see that other side of it. And I think it helped, instead of me perpetuating it with, "Yeah, she did this and she did that," and I had a whole different perspective, and I wasn't making excuses. I was just trying to help her get through this time in her life that was very difficult, and it worked. And but that's a really good question, and it's very hard. But if you can lead by example at some of the, and that's in general, that but it's hard.
Well, and I found that women will bond, and they will finally figure out, you can get them to talk. They will figure out what's wrong, and they'll fix it. But if you've got sorry about this, guys, but if you have a male introvert And so, you know, I used to ask questions. I would just say, well, have I done, you know, are you upset with me? Or what have I said? Or, you know. But sometimes asking questions puts them off
Yeah.
board. And so you can't figure out how to get there.
Yeah, it's a really, you know, I've worked with a lot of introverts working in the accounting industry for a long time. So one of the things that I would try to do is go to lunch with everybody. I feel like that's a pretty good way. You get out of the office, you know, you're on neutral ground. And I would try to find out, you know, what sparks you? Because everybody has something. Even the introverts have things that they're interested in. It may be, you know, computer programming, it may be gaming, it may be their children, it may, you know, there's something out there. And then from there, that would usually start with having an interest or trying to find somebody who had an interest in something similar that they did. I worked for a company who wanted everybody volunteering, and that was one of the things that I did, was met with everybody and found out where their passions were, because there was no sense in assigning you to go work at the Humane Society if you were afraid of dogs, you know. So it was more of like, you know, what are your interests? And they filled out this little form, and then we would, you know, match up volunteer opportunities with people who had a passion for animals or for senior citizens or things like that. And it really worked well because people got to go volunteer, and some of it on the clock even, but it was an opportunity for them to feel like they were important and that their passions were being able to express it through their work. And it made a big difference with people just interacting too, because if there was 5 people who all had a passion for animals, for instance, then they would get together and go walk dogs after work at the Humane Society and you know, things like that. So it was kind of bringing people together with that didn't even work together, but you know, and it helped.
Okay, one more question.
Go.
So what if you have a great group of people that are kind of working for a similar goal, but somewhere in that group is a whiner?
Always is.
All the reasons why something won't work. No matter what you know, no matter how you try to lead or what input you have, and you can't
Yeah.
pull them. You can't even help pull them.
So you just fire them. Yeah.
Just move on.
You're writing that down, right? Well, I mean, I think there's always at least one. I really do. I mean, there's always a Debbie Downer. There's always a, you know, this can't be done, you know. And, you know, sometimes it's nice to prove them wrong, but at the same time, a lot of times you just have to kind of kid them and deal with it. But anybody have an idea of how to work with someone like that?
I would suggest that you involve that person in your projects. Of course, I'm not saying that you don't, but what I've found is that when people have that negative perspective, then it's almost like your project will be better in the long run because they've thought of every way it could possibly fail, and
It's true.
you've thought through the negatives. So it doesn't necessarily make it easier to work with that person, but spent last week at a leadership academy in Richmond, and one of the men who's the president of Dewberry Enterprises, he's a state board member, he spoke. That was one of the very first things he said. He said, if you've got a naysayer, who's a strong naysayer, involve them in the process from the very beginning, so that
I agree with that.
and you don't have to listen to 100% of the thing. I mean, you know, you listen, but you don't. Doesn't mean that it changes the direction of your path. It's just that you're. Yes. Thank you.
And so you have to like improve those listening skills and actually listen to them a little bit. But if you start listening to them too much, you're not going to believe anything's going to work either.
Right.
because they want to convince everybody. But I do believe in bringing them in at the beginning and having them part of the process. But there is at least always one, depending upon the size of your company, there can be a lot more. And you're not going to change that attitude. Some people are just like that. But I also have found that I was doing a training the other day with some people on LinkedIn, and one of the guys was that guy that, and about the fourth time he raised his hand with something negative, I just like said, okay, what else do you have to say that's negative? Let's just get it all out right now. And everybody in the room was like, but I said it with a smile, and but it was just kind of like, no matter what I say, or no matter what I teach you today, you're going to have something negative when you walk out that room, because you've been very negative here. So we actually kind of talked about it, and then the other people that were in the training kind of started kidding him a little bit about he's always like that. He's always but I just kind of gave it right back to him, and then he kind of, I guess it kind of was like a slap in the face, because I don't know if they realize that they're doing that, because it's their nature.
If it's somebody I'm working with, I just say, what can I do?
Sometimes you can't do
But
anything.
if you're in a big, like a committee or something, that's a whole other animal that probably doesn't have anything to do.
Well, it does. I mean, because it's all working with people, and it's all trying to, develop your soft skills so you can get along with everybody, and everybody can be on the same page. But, I think, like, I don't know, Barbara said, involving them at the beginning. So, this company that I used to work for, we developed a team of people to kind of help with event planning and different things within the company to kind of, it was a culture team is what we called it. And I purposely put a couple of those naysayers on the team, and a couple introverts as well, because I didn't want the whole committee to be people who were all full of ideas and stuff. And so it was nice, because it was a balance with things, and sometimes they would say things that we hadn't considered because of their personality being different. But most of the time it was things that were like, yeah, whatever.
So Cindy, I gave you a little preamble to the community college system is looking at this whole thing, soft skills. We've heard employers for years and years and years, and we've trained on soft skills. And there are instructors at the community college that say, yes, it's embedded in my class.
Good.
And there are other instructors at other community colleges that say this. But the system is looking at a way to document it, that a person not only leaves with technical skills or transfer skills, but they also have learned along the way this cluster of soft skills. So they've identified the soft skills.
Good.
Based on all the research. But how do you truly document that Melinda has been through these areas of soft skills and started here with a pre-assessment and didn't know much, and now she understands those soft skills needed by employers. Have you ever ran into a tool that documents a badge, a certificate?
I have not, but I can do some research and see if there's anything out there. Now, are these skills just incorporated into other classes, or are you doing a whole separate skill a whole class on communication, or?
Yeah, we're asking instructors to embed pieces of those soft skills in their classes. Because we've already got public speaking and some of those other things. But we want each instructor to take ownership of a piece of the soft skills and embed it in their course, but we have to measure if that's been done.
Does anybody have any ideas on that?
I know Virginia Highlands people, which is, most of us have been researching, and we don't have that answer to that.
And no
the system
other
doesn't, I think.
education system is doing this?
Well, yes. But what we're trying to figure out is what's right for the Virginia Community College
Yeah.
system, and then what's right for Virginia Highlands. And there are tools out there that cost, and then there are tools that give you programs that you teach to that. But we're trying to give instructors ownership of teaching this communication.
So will that
course.
curriculum be approved then through the school? So, if I'm a professor and I'm teaching, would it be like, if I'm teaching English, would I have to incorporate some things into that? So who's going to make sure that I'm doing that?
We're gonna document it
Okay.
on a rubric and say, you decided to work on communication. These are the things you incorporated, and Melinda in your class started here, and now her knowledge is this.
Wow, that's going to be a lot of
It is. And
interpersonal.
we're ready to take it on, but we are having trouble finding an instrument, am I saying the right thing? To really document.
A measurement. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but the pre and post, what we're saying is, what's that pre and post test, and what does it measure? We know that needs to be there, but we can't find the right tool.
I know the only thing I can think of, and this is probably not even going to help at all because it would take too much time, would be an interview process with the person.
We talked about that.
I mean, and I can't imagine
Every student.
being able to do that. I mean,
Like a mock interview?
Well-
Well, that might get you something.
that actually is not a bad idea. And we have, when I worked, one of the accounting firms that I worked for, we should do heavy recruiting at different universities, like Tennessee Tech and University of Tennessee. And we would do a whole day of mock interviews with students, and we would have to turn in our list of questions, to be approved and things like that. And then, we would judge them, basically on how they dressed and how they looked at us and how they answered the questions. So, and it wasn't about their math skills or their accounting skills. It was more about how they relate and how they interviewed. So, something like that could. And these interviews were like 15 to 20 minutes long, each of them, and it was a lengthy process. I can't imagine trying to do that with all of your students, but if it comes down to something like that,
Yeah, we're still trying to
I took an organizational leadership class with Amber, and we had to, it seemed like we did some kind of aptitude test in the beginning, and then we did a different test about the things that we had gone over in this class at the end. That wasn't for a grade. Instead of being an entrance and exit interview, it was kind of like some skill set of questions that gave the reader an idea of where you what you
to gauge, yeah.
We found a few tools. I mean, we've done a lot of research because our quality enhancement plan is also going to be about experiential learning and soft skills too. So we've got several things going on. We've done research, but we find ones that are outrageously expensive per person, which we can't do that with all of our students.
No.
Or one that is so prescriptive in order to measure it that the instructor would have to teach that curriculum in their English class.
Yeah,
not
that's how I was
incorporate it
wondering.
into their
Yeah.
English.
Yeah, the assessment is tied to the specific.
Yes.
So, and what about at the beginning, if there's some type of testing or interview process and you see a student is really deficient in a certain area, would there be additional classes maybe set up just for, for some, like communication? I see communication, and communication's broad, we all know that, but I see that as the biggest thing, and that was the biggest red flag that when I would interview college students that I would get, because so many of them wouldn't look at you, or these are accounting students too, so a lot of them weren't real outgoing, but they didn't have those skills of being able to sit down and actually have an interview that way. So I don't know if that's something that you might want to consider too, because that to me, helping them with those skills would be very beneficial for them for their future. And they may be really good at some of the other things, but they may not be able to have a conversation or communicate, look someone in the eyes. Some people are very uncomfortable. I mean, like public speaking's easy. If somebody can't do public speaking, you can sign them up for that class, and doesn't mean that they're going to do well in it, but at least it'll help them with their skill set with it. But I don't know. I'm really happy that you guys are doing that, though. I've never heard of a learning institution actually taking that on. So huge.
Actually, one that I found in Tennessee, NTSU is doing it.
Are they?
In their College of Business, yes.
Have you called them up and said,
Oh,
hey?
I've got all the research, and I shared it with the BCCS when they started
Good.
doing this. And it was too prescriptive, and
Ugh.
everybody would have to do the same thing, and they didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't
But
see
it's
that as being
working for
benefit.
MTSU.
It is working for them.
Yes, very well.
Well, good luck to you. I don't know what to tell you. That's a tough one.
The other thing I'm curious to know is, do you have access to any previously used activities? The research that we've done so far leads us to believe that we're not going to be able to put on a video and have students watch a video and their soft skills improve.
Well, we know that.
Yeah.
What we've learned is that it's almost like improv in a way, almost like
Nice.
theater, that you have to build muscle memory. And so
Yeah.
you physically have to practice sitting down and talking to someone and looking them in the eye. And so we're trying to build a storehouse of suggested activities so that faculty have go-to activities, because it's going to be hands-on experiences that will truly improve soft skills.
Yes, it will. You can't get it from watching that video or even reading a book.
Yeah.
And although there's a lot of great resources like that out there, but I don't know of anything like that. But do you know of anything?
Believe it or not, I took the accounting class, and every single session, you had the instruction, and then you had a break, and then you had the interaction, whatever that lesson was for the day, and you absolutely had to either two people had, and you had to get up in front of the rest of the class to do the interaction.
Good.
And so there was never a time that you didn't have to actively participate in the learning. And it was very hard for some people. We had one class that, was kind of telling you how to vent your anger. And you were supposed to start out by beating a newspaper on the table. And this guy who worked for a bottling company was irritated with his job, and he started beating that table. The next thing you do, he got all fired up about the whole thing. He wound up kicking the table over, and they kind of had to calm him down. But the instructor then was able to bring him back around and let him see, how he was reacting to others, and it was very, very helpful.
All right. Anything else? Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Oh, wait just a minute.
Oh.
I forgot to tell you what's going on in the next couple
that's
of
right.
weeks. I enjoyed the class so much, I was still back there thinking. Okie dokie. So, October the 12th, converting your business to the cloud. I don't know if you all struggle with iCloud, but I do. So next week will be converting your business to the cloud. The week after that, October the 19th, is going to be how to lead a happy and productive team. And we have somebody coming up from Nashville with a sonority group to do that. And October the 26th is creating a PR strategy. November the 2nd is online marketing. And November is Global Entrepreneurship Month. So we are actually on November the 17th doing an Entrepreneur Express program that Sandy has done statewide for many years. So, our partners, thank you. And as you know, our partners, or if you don't know, our partners are Small Business, Virginia Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity, the Washington County Chamber of Commerce, Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator, and is it the Workforce Development? It's Virginia Highlands Community College Workforce Development Division. Yeah. So, thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you again.